Hello, fifth graders. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of April, and this is our our science time. We're starting a new chapter called Wonders of the Sky. You took your science test yesterday. I'm sure you did well. Make sure that you're honorable and you don't have any notes around or your books or anything. And so now we're going to start a new chapter 7, called Wonders of the Sky. You're going to enjoy this. We're going to learn about planets and stars, etc., the sun, the moon, etc. So we're on page 179, Wonders of the Sky. It looks like this. And I'm going to start reading. The amazing sun. What wonders we can see in the sky at night. The silvery moon, the glimmering stars, and the occasional brilliance of a shooting star all delight us. In the daytime, the glory of the sun is too great for us to look at directly, but it floods our world with light and warmth. The heavens are filled with spectacular signs of God's power and wisdom in creation. But the sky also contains wonders that are invisible to us. In fact, the sky itself is one of the greatest of all wonders. Around the earth is wrapped a blanket of air called the atmosphere, which God created to warm, protect, and give life to his creatures. Without the atmosphere, our world would be as cold and dead as the moon. There would be no rich forests and meadows, no dogs or cats or animals of any kind, because all of those things need air. There would be no clouds, no rainbows, no sunsets, and most important, no people to gaze at the beauty of the sky. All right, so this atmosphere that's wrapped around our planet is vital. Obviously, God created that and put it there for a purpose, obviously to sustain life on planet Earth. So we're going to learn about all those different things: the atmosphere, the sun, the moon, planets, etc. So the greater light. On the fourth day of creation, God caused the sun, the greater light, to rule the day, to shine upon the earth. Through the sun, God gives light and life to the world he created. The sun is so important to us that many pagan people worshipped it as a god because it made their crops grow and kept them warm. When winter approached and the sun arched lower and lower across the sky, they became alarmed. Would the sun leave them altogether? Would it disappear and never return? They knew that they would die if that happened. As soon as the longest night of the year was over and the days began to lengthen, they rejoiced that the sun was returning to its full strength. Okay, so a lot of pagan people worshiped the sun because they knew that it brought life to their crops, etc. And we know that God created the sun to rise in the east, set in the west. The sun is always there. And so there will be a morning every day. There will be a evening every night. And God created it to, we're going to learn about the revolution and whatnot, that the earth revolves around the sun, etc. So we're going to talk about all of that. But they didn't know because they didn't know God. That's what I meant by pagan. And pagan people are people who don't know God. And so they didn't know God and know that he created the world and that it's going to work exactly the way he wanted it to work, day in and day out. And they didn't need to be stressed or worried about that. But they were, because they didn't know God. The people whose faith was in God, however, did not worry about the sun's going away and not returning. They remembered God's promise to Noah: while the earth remaineth, quote, seed time, let's turn the page, and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Like I said, it's every day. We know that what God created is there forever. It can't be broken. Genesis 8:22. They knew that our world is a world of law and order established by God. Did you know that the sun is so large it could hold 1,300,000 Earths? If you could drive a car around the Earth's equator at 60 miles per hour, the trip would take you 17 days. If you could drive a car around the sun's equator at the same speed, it would take 5 years. That's how vast and enormous the sun is. It takes only 8 minutes for the sun's rays to travel the 93 million miles to the earth, where they are absorbed by the trees, the vegetation, and the soil. When sunlight warms the earth, heat waves are released into the atmosphere and absorbed by particles of dust and moisture in the air. These form a cozy blanket around the earth to keep the heat from escaping back into space. Okay, so the sun is huge. It could hold within it 1,300,000 Earths. We know that it's 93 million miles away from Earth, from the sun. It's the exact place it needs to be placed. If it was a millisecond, you know, a eighth of an inch, a 16th of an inch, a 32nd of an inch farther away, we'd freeze. And if it was just a tiny, 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 tiny bit closer to us, we would burn. So God put it exactly where it needed to be, obviously, to sustain life. It says, I want to read this again. When sunlight warms the earth, heat waves are released into the atmosphere and absorbed by particles of dust and moisture in the air. And these form a cozy blanket around the earth to keep the heat from escaping. So think about when you're cold and you get in a blanket, the blanket keeps you warm. Okay, so Jesus created the sun, and it's like it's like a blanket that warms us, and the atmosphere around the sun keeps us protected. Okay, it keeps us warm and cozy. All right, so I want to double check something to make sure I got all the major points there. Yeah, so when sun warms the earth, the heat rays go into the atmosphere wraps up those heat rays. Okay, so the helpful sun. So we know that the sun is 93 million miles away. It's vast, it's enormous, it's there. It's not that it comes out and goes down. It's that the way the earth revolves around, it's always right in the center, right where it is. The helpful sun. The sun gives food to all living things. Green plants use energy from sunlight to unite water and carbon dioxide, thus forming sugar and oxygen. Through this process called photosynthesis, our food is made. Photo means light. Animals eat plants and are in turn eaten by other animals. People can eat either plants or animals. Thus, the sun is the ultimate source of food for both animals and plants. Animals and people. Okay, so photosynthesis is how our food is made, the process of photosynthesis. We're going to talk more about that. It says that energy from the sun is united with water and carbon dioxide, and this forms sugar and oxygen, and that is called photosynthesis. Photo means light. Animals eat plants and are in turn eaten by other animals. People can eat either plants or animals. Thus, the sun is the ultimate source of food for both animals and people. So without sun, there's no food, okay? Because the sun is what gives food to all living things. Through it says photosynthesis. The sun is also a source of energy. Plants and animals that receive light from the sun thousands of years ago now lie buried deep in the earth. Their remains form coal, petroleum, and natural gas, which when burned provide heat and energy for people. Also, when the sun shines on lakes and oceans, it evaporates the water, which later falls upon the earth as rain or snow, watering the earth and filling the rivers. Dams built on these rivers generate electricity by water power. Okay, so I want to read that again. The sun is also a source of energy. We get coal from it, petroleum, oil, in other words, natural gas, and that provides heat and energy for people, etc. It says that it causes evaporation on snow-capped mountains, which gives us water. When the water and rain, you know, we know the cycle of the water cycle there is what they're talking about. It says I want to read that again. Also, when the sun shines on lakes and oceans, it evaporates the water, which later falls upon the earth as rain or snow. Can't live without water. Watering the earth and filling the rivers. And then dams that are built on these rivers generate electricity by water power. God knew just what kind of sun to make and just where to put it. If the sun were any closer to the earth, like I said, all living things would burn up. If it were farther away, all living things would freeze. So exactly where it needed to be. What the sun is like? The sun's inner layers. The sun is a great glowing mass of hydrogen and helium gases that are heated to temperatures of about 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit near the surface and a possible 27 million degrees Fahrenheit at the core. The core is the innermost section of the sun. Although the inner layers of the sun are a mystery to us, we know that the sun has a tremendous gravitational pull. This gravitational pull does more than cause the planets to orbit around the sun. The sun's immense gravity, meaning massive, huge, squeezes hydrogen atoms in its core together so tightly that they join together to form helium atoms, releasing atomic energy. This energy is what warms the earth. So the outside, the outside of the sun is about 11 million degrees Fahrenheit. The inside is possibly 27 million degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, we don't know factually, especially the core, we can't get in there. It's too hot, obviously. So like it says, these inner layers are a mystery to us. We know that the sun has a tremendous gravitational pull because it holds all of the planets that revolve around it in place from flying off into space. So the sun has its own gravitational pull. It says the sun's immense gravity squeezes hydrogen atoms in its core together so tightly that they join together to form helium atoms, like I read before, releasing atomic energy. This energy is what warms the earth. Okay? The sun's outer layers, so those are the inner layers. The round sphere that we see in the sky during the day represents only a part of the entire sun. This sphere, called the photosphere, which is sphere of light, is the surface layer of the sun and is what we see with our eyes. The photosphere is very bright and can be harmful to the eyes of anyone that looks directly at it, so you know not to do that. A closer view of the photosphere through a telescope shows a bubbling surface similar to that of boiling water. This bubbling surface often has dark spots that are called sunspots. So look at the sun here. Okay, here's your sunspots. So this bubbling surface often has dark spots that are called sunspots. Sunspots are caused by the sun's magnetic field and appear darker than the rest of the sun because they are much cooler than the surrounding gases that make up the photosphere. All right, so this photosphere is, it says, is what we can see, and it's known as the sphere of light. And you see the photosphere here. We see that all around the photosphere. We see the sunspots. A closer view of the photosphere shows us those dark sunspots. Now, should you be looking at the sun trying to, no. You have a picture right here you can look at. And those sunspots are like boiling water on the surface. So imagine boiling water, so they're bubbling up and they're dark spots that are called sunspots. And it says they're caused by the sun's magnetic field and therefore appear darker than the rest of the sun because they are much cooler than the surrounding gases that make up the photosphere. So they have a darker look. A fiery atmosphere called the chromosphere. So look at the chromosphere. You see the little arrow there. The chromosphere, sphere of color, surrounds the photosphere with displays of giant bursts of gas that gush out for thousands of miles before falling back, to the Earth's surface, sun's surface. Let me try that again. A fiery atmosphere called the chromosphere, or sphere of color, surrounds the photosphere with displays of giant bursts of gas that gush out for thousands of miles before falling back to the sun's surface. These gas bursts, invisible even through a telescope, must be viewed through a monochromator, which is a one-color meter, a device which blocks out all light except for one selected color. So you could see the burst. You could see those little pieces of light like flashing out, flaring out. Okay, and we can't even see that with the telescope, only monochromator. I believe I am pronouncing that right. If not, forgive me. But what that device does is it blocks out all light except for one selected color. Okay, so that's the chromosphere, the sphere of color. The corona, so find the corona. You see that out here. The corona, a vapor blanket with an estimated temperature of 1 million degrees Fahrenheit to 2 million degrees Fahrenheit, surrounds the chromosphere and extends to about 249,000 miles from the surface of the sun. It is visible only during a total eclipse, when the moon blocks the sun's photosphere from our view. So that's the chromosphere. All right, the corona, excuse me, a vapor blanket with an estimated temperature of 1 million degrees Fahrenheit to 2 million degrees Fahrenheit. It surrounds the chromosphere and extends to about 249,000 miles from the surface of the sun. It is visible only during a total eclipse, when the moon blocks the sun's photosphere from our view. So, and here you can see a picture of the sun's chromosphere seen through a monochromator. Okay, so you can see that there. Now, your comp check, we define photosynthesis, core, sunspots, photosphere, chromosphere, and corona. Make sure you give me detailed definitions of those words. Sometimes you're only giving me part of it, and I can't give you full credit. Remember, you need to learn everything in context. And number 2, what did ancient people think about the sun? We talked about that on the first page there. And number 3, how far is the sun from the earth? Okay, and we know that if it was just a little bit closer, we'd all burn up. If it was a little bit farther away, we'd all freeze. Okay, so that is our first comp check and section of Wonders of the Sky. You're gonna like this unit if you like space and all, which, you know, we all do. And that is about the sun. And so incredible, every part of, you know, what we see here in the Milky Way. The galaxy that we live in is vast and incredible, and yet that's just the beginning of the universe. So I know you're going to enjoy this chapter. Do a good job on your comp check, and we will press on Thursday.